The idea of the Christian hell is very old, ancient even. And as much as its menace and iconography are still relevant, its fire and demons giving children nightmares, its promise of torment driving adults to shaky tears inside confession booths, it happens every day all around the world. If you, for a moment, remove the immense and complex context of the Bible and treat it just as a narrative piece, you'll see that indeed, the idea of the Christian hell feels old. And by today's writing standards, the Christian hell is not enough. It's too tame, too blunt, not painful enough. You might have been raised in a Christian culture, and you might have been told, even subtly, even without direct words, that this idea, the idea of hell, is the worst that could ever happen. But if you unshackle yourself from this belief, and you just look at the other hells we've been creating for our books, our movies and games, perhaps card games, you might find yourself looking at something that's, so much worse than fire and demons. Somebody you thought was your friend hands you a cup of tea, fresh jasmine. You take a sip and your taste buds are taken over by an unexpected, sharp, metallic taste. Your friend immediately tells you an idea, and at that very moment, this idea lodges itself in you. They tell you, flesh is so feeble. It ages, it aches, it rots. Why do we accept being made of flesh? Something inside of you stirs. That night you dream of gums being pierced by small and sharp steel hooks. You wake up and you can't stop thinking about it. Every day, all day. In 4 days, your body starts to swell. Your skin breaks open, revealing the soft, pink flesh below. In a week, you're hungry, but not only through your mouth, you're hungry throughout your whole body, and there's nothing you can do to satiate it. You can't stop thinking about steel, about cold, smooth, perfect steel. You are disgusted by yourself, more disgusted than you ever felt before. Why are you made of this flesh? You scratch your skinless neck with whatever's left of your nails, longing for the hooks that bless you in your dreams. You see now how fire and demons is just not enough. Welcome to Phyrexia. Once you descend, once you start the completion process, once you start exchanging more and more of your feeble flesh for steel, one thing becomes clear to you. This is the right way. Your whole life, your whole flesh life, you've been wrong. True pain is to be soft, is to rot. The hooks, they are happiness. You've found salvation, you've found perfection. And now it's time for your true life's calling. It's time to dedicate your entire existence to making this whole world like you are now. Cold steel piercing swollen gums. I started playing Magic the Gathering when I was 11. A friend of mine from school gave me a basic black deck. And right there, inside my very first library, was also my very first Hell Dweller. My first Phyrexian. With a 5 power and a 4 toughness and this violent illustration, this monster was, as far as my limited understanding of the game went, my major threat. And in this space here that I left intentionally blank was a little piece of writing that helped giving this card and this game its narrative context. What do you think I found there? What would you write there? The last thing I was expecting in the description of this killing machine was a nursery rhyme. Especially being not too far from my nursery rhyme days myself. This was not just fear, it was fear with a smell and a taste, like a dry mouth and a dark bedroom. And even at 11, I was impacted by it, I still remember it. So here I am, 2 decades later. Let's explore how a few lines of text on a game card are enough to teach someone a lesson about fear. Welcome to the Worldbuilding Tower. In this series here, we explore great stories with living, breathing worlds, and we try to understand why and how they play with our emotions so masterfully. Today we'll be talking about a hell that feels worse than hell. Today we'll be talking about the design and writing of Phyrexia, a world that the game Magic: The Gathering has been building for decades. We're also gonna talk about micro-writing, how to make your reader, or your player, feel something specific very quickly. How to create a strong vibe with just a few words. Look at this card. Its flavor text says, imagine a giant room, like a library, except instead of books, it's filled with body parts. Carved wrist, resistant spymaster. This gives us context, not only context about the card, but about the world. Flavor text has been there since the beginning of Magic, guiding what emotion we should feel, just in case the image and game mechanics didn't do the job by themselves. But as the game and the writing evolved, it started to guide us more directly. It's not fear alone, it's this kind of fear. We want you to visualize a scene that will provoke a very specific emotional state. And this intention lives at the heart of game design. Good game design is about building this structure, this set of rules and interactions and systems, but instead of looking too deeply into it, the game designers are looking ahead, trying to predict and conduct the player's emotions, what they will feel when they interact with that structure. It's about building something complicated, looking ahead, gathering feedback, understanding emotional reaction. Game writing follows those same rules. The writing team wants you to experience this bodily horror and meticulousness of Phyrexia. And if you pay attention here, they're also sneakily teaching you that there's a resistance here and a team of spies. That's good poetics and good exposition in a very short space. This is where flavor text excels. But of course, flavor text is never isolated. It's always part of a larger context, a spell that represents a piece of a world, and a card that represents a piece of a game. With that in mind, what creature do you believe we'll find paired with this flavor text? Some vicious swarm aspirants hang motionless in a canopy for weeks, allowing poisonous flowers to root in their flesh and weave tendrils through their hair. This type of slow, week-long movement would be hard to represent in a static image, but a few lines of text can convey this context just fine. We also learn here that there's a local flora and that the vicious swarm is something one aspires to join. Above all, we learn about the dedication and patience of our enemy. What do you think this creature is? Probably not an elf, right? Flavor text is not always fiction. Sometimes it comes in the form of non-fiction, giving us details about the more abstract parts of the world building, the chemistry, the morals, the technology. For example, here's something fundamental about the Phyrexian ethos. Phyrexia strives to simulate natural life, but it can't resist improving on the design. Even though this text was probably added to an existing concept of a card, we could imagine the other way around. If you were to create a creature around this concept, what kind of natural life would you desecrate? In their case, that was the result. We know that flavor text is one of the last things added to a Magic card before printing, but still the thought experiment is worthy. If you, as a writer, knew that some of the most professional game designers and illustrators on the planet would get that little piece, little flavor narrative you create and run with it, what would you write? For example, this flavor text here. While one mouth feeds, the other chatters mindless paeans of elesh norn's glory. This is an interesting art challenge. How would you manifest this sentiment? Did you think of something like that? I'm gonna go ahead and guess you didn't. How about this one here? Vorinclex removed its teeth so it wouldn't waste time chewing before moving to the next kill. Magic has a lot of worms, novels, and perhaps this one would pass me by if the flavor text hadn't given me a focus point to pay attention to. Yeah, this mouth is actually creepier than teeth. It points at a much crueler death, one that doesn't even treat you as food but as a mere resource. You know what's worse than being eaten by a carnivore? Being eaten by something that's not designed to kill you quickly and effectively. How about this other one here that happens to be my favorite in this whole new set? You think it's creepy now? You should see how it eats Melira. What do you think the art portrays? Well, I think this combination of art and text work really well here. It forces me to imagine something very uncomfortable, very bodily, machine movements and human teeth. And this is what Phyrexia is all about. This very specific disgust, this very specific relentlessness that was built by years and years and years of good world building. When well executed, flavor text guarantees that even if that's your first booster pack, even if that's the first card you ever see, you will be conducted to the right emotional context from the start. Of course, I'm very fond of fantasy novels. I want to be a novelist myself, but I think there's a lesson here about distilled, concentrated meaning. So let's learn from Phyrexian poetics. Today's writing exercise will not take you an hour. It will take you 3 minutes. We're gonna pretend that we work for Wizards of the Coast, and we're gonna pretend that we're writing flavor text for a future Magic the Gathering card. So this time, instead of asking you to write half a page or even a full page of text, we're gonna limit ourselves to 2 sentences. How much meaning, how much context, how much world building can you convey in 2 sentences? But also imagine that your short text will be illustrated and turned into a game piece. So it's alright if it only shows a very narrow part of the story. Since we're drawing inspiration from Phyrexia, we're gonna stick to the horror genre. But it's not our intention here to write fan fiction. The whole point of this series is to practice our own writing, our own worlds. Not the teeth and gums and steel and flesh of Phyrexia, but your own horror, your own preferences, your own world. And bonus points if you want to be very specific, very clear, very intentional about what kind of fear you're exploring. Mention your references. Where are you finding this horror, this fear? And if the idea of a quick exercise was enticing to you, pay attention to the end of the video because I got an invitation for you. So let's write our flavor text. When I was in my early 20s, I worked for this theater production company, and one of our plays was called O Lugar Escuro, The Dark Place. It was a play about Alzheimer's disease, and it was a brutal piece of art. But even more brutal than that were the conversations we had after the presentation. We got a governmental grant to bring this play to a series of cultural tents in the more impoverished areas around Rio de Janeiro. Basic education is tricky in places like that. Education is severely underfunded, and people need to start working from a very early age. So a big chunk of our audience couldn't read, and the vast majority hadn't even finished primary school. These were good people with really good intentions, and most had attended the play because they had somebody with Alzheimer's disease in their families and they just didn't know how to deal with it and didn't have the resources to educate themselves. We were a theater company, not a health-oriented educational project, so we couldn't really teach them, but we could sit down and listen to their stories. It was a very healing experience. They would tell us that in that stage, for the first time in their lives, they saw somebody who understood, who could communicate how deeply they understood the struggles that they were going through. But the fear in the stories that these people told was real, was heavy. I know Magic the Gathering already explored the theme of fear and losing one's sanity in its world building, especially in the Shadows over Innistrad block. But it was explored in a very fantasy way. Well, I'd like to bring some heavy factuality to the emotions of my flavor text. I want to draw inspiration from the real dark place, not some defeatable monster. Okay, so what do I got for you? Mum's expression darkened. You know I'm not your mother, right? What I like about this one is that the first word answers the question in the end. I put it first here because I thought it was my best. Let's try another one. When the tranquil doctors stormed into the hall carrying sledgehammers, I flinched and fell. But they ignored me and proceeded to break all the mirrors. This is based in reality. I heard a lot of real stories of families who had to remove all mirrors from their homes. Apparently it could be super triggering. Here I'm going for a more basic Magic the Gathering style. I'm introducing a faction and some key behaviors that might explain or hint at other cards, like mirrors of some kind or a sledgehammer equipment. I also enjoy the juxtaposition between tranquil and stormed. I hope it conveys that they're actually not that chill. Okay, last one. It's not as if you forgot your name, it's as if you've never been given one. I was trying to be both abstract and visceral here, but not visceral like Phyrexia. I wanted to evoke a terrifying psychological experience, one that we don't think about very often. Okay, so those were my few attempts. I hope it was an interesting exercise, and especially the relationship between my inspiration from Phyrexia, my inspiration from my real life experiences and the conversations I had, and the final product. I hope there was something between this exchange there that was enlightening to you, as it was for me. And I said I had an invitation for you, and here it is. If 10 different people do this exercise and write in the comments, they're on flavor texts, and also write a little comment of consent, like, oh yeah, I would love to show up in your channel, then I will make a video analyzing and commenting on those 10 pieces of text. This idea was given by Harry, a fan of the channel. Thank you so much, Harry. This feedback you gave me was phenomenal. And yeah, if you would like me to give you a little text to look and a little comment, I would love to do that. If you're not super familiar with Magic and its community and you would like to carry on exploring this incredible world building, I would recommend 3 different YouTube channels for you. First one being Ristic Studies, that explores themes around art and cultural reference and magic in a very profound way. The second one is Spice 8 Rack, that explores the morals and the ethos of magic in a funny, light-hearted, but also very witty way. And last but not least, Dice Try, a much smaller YouTube channel that has been creating amazing world-building takeaway videos. I'll link everything in the doobly-doo below, and if you'd like to tell those creators about my existence, they are my senpais. I hope that one day they notice me. I love them. And a special thank you to Alberto, a friend of mine who let me use his soundtrack, this one here, that I've been using in the videos recently. It's so much better to use music from somebody you know, somebody you shook hands with, somebody you had a glass of wine with, than to use some amorphous music from the internet. I feel like I feel it's real, it's concrete, and this man is a talent. I'll leave links for his work below. And a special thank you to my patrons. Thank you so much for supporting this channel. Thank you so much for giving me the energy to try new things, to try new video experiments like I did with the introduction here. Thank you so much. It's because of your support that I believe that one day, if I'm just lucky enough, if I dedicate my life, I can be a professional. This is what I'm trying, folks. Don't forget to check the links below. There's a bunch of references, and I'll see you folks next time.